Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the studios of Grafton TV, located at 26 Providence Road. I'm Bob DeToma. This is Meet the Candidate. Today's guest is Andy Jefferson. He's a member of FinCom and currently running for Select Board. So welcome.
Thank you, Bob, for having me.
It's a pleasure, absolutely. So why don't you tell us about yourself? Are you from Grafton? Did you originate here? You come from someplace else?
So I'm not originally from Grafton, but I think I'm generationally adjacent, let's say. My grandparents bought their first house here after they got married. My mother and my aunt were raised here, and after they got married, they moved elsewhere. I grew up in Rutland, the geographic center of the state. That's our little claim to fame. And then when the time came for my wife and I to get a house, this was one of the first places we looked. It had the most appeal. It was very centrally located for both of our jobs. It worked out. It's a wonderful place. We knew this is where we wanted to be. So we ended up coming back and buying my grandparents' house in 2006.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Nothing weird about living in your grandparents' house?
No, so many fond memories of being out here growing up. So my grandparents, Art and Rose Carlson, like I said, lived out here. Art had a landscaping business and nursery down front. It was one of my first paying jobs when I became of age. We spent a lot of time over the summer out here, just either casually working in the nursery or getting in my grandmother's hair up at the house. But it was a lot of fond memories. So no, it wasn't weird at all. It was really nice.
I could drive to my grandparents' houses. I know exactly where they're located. I'm not quite sure I could purchase a house and live in it. It's a personal thing, maybe.
I get it.
What's your background in your career? What do you do for a living?
So I'm a graphic designer. I've worked in Boston since about 2006. Again, that was one of the things that drew us to Grafton, where we're over on Weston, so we're right by the commuter rail. I take that into the city, or was taking that into the city every day pre-pandemic. We're getting ready to transition back into the office now. So I'll be back to that part-time, but my wife was also working in Framingham at the time, so again, very central, easy Route 9 access. She's moved on and works in the Grafton School District now, so even better. But yes, I've been a graphic designer since about 2002. Like I said, I spent most of my time in Boston. Right now I work for a Seattle-based company. We have a smaller Boston office, but it's great. It's great. It's a career that I wanted to get into, and it hasn't disappointed.
What kind of things do you work on?
Recently, we do a lot of work. We previously did flu communications for the Washington Department of Health, the Washington State Department of Health.
Like infographics?
Kind of a lot of social outreach,
Okay.
those types of things.
Yeah.
PR. When COVID struck, we applied for a contract to do their COVID communications. So, the bright side being it led to some job security, but it was taxing. It was a lot of work. Information was constantly changing, guidelines being updated. So there was a lot of public outreach, and definitely the more impactful work I think I've done throughout my whole career. There's a lot of we've been presented with a lot of good statistics, and you can see when our marketing started to go in market, there was a noticeable decline in COVID infections in Washington State. So rewarding. It's a good place.
How many times do you have to present your project before you get it accepted? Because we go through a lot of that. I mean, it's like we do the project, we edit, we go back and shoot it again. It's probably similar.
Yeah, very, very similar process. A lot of back and forth. Some clients are easier to work with than others. So sometimes you hit that home run right out the gate, but it's rare. You want to put your best foot forward. It's really kind of an ego-free field. You have to get over that. You might have created something, but you're giving it out to the world, and they have to take it in, and the client has to give you their feedback, because ultimately they're paying for it. It's what they want, and you have to make what they want for them. So there's some advisory role to that, and trying to guide them into what you think would be the right path. But ultimately, the decision lies with them, and we hope we don't go through too many rounds of revisions.
So a graphic artist is not necessarily someone who's got an art talent?
Yeah,
can you sketch? Again, can you draw?
I can do some rough
caricatures?
Sketches. I used to draw a lot when I was younger, and that was really, I thought it was going to be more of that.
Yeah.
I would call myself drawing adjacent now. I have a lot of friends who are incredibly talented artists. in all sorts of media. I would not consider myself one of them. But you don't have to be good at those things to be good at graphic design.
Mm. It's kind of a cut and paste medium, isn't it? Or?
To a degree, to a degree. You know, there's certainly with all the copy and whatnot that you're presented with, you know, I'm not drafting any of those materials myself. We either have, it's provided by the client, or we have a copywriting team that can do all that stuff. And you know, again, all those things go through rounds of approval with the client before they come to us for layout. And then, you know, it can be a little bit templated, I'll say, because most companies have their own sets of brand guidelines or rules that you have to follow, you know, specific fonts, specific colors, all those things. So you at least have a palette to draw from, or sometimes a structure if you're modeling it off of something else. But there are also bigger projects where, you know, it's ground up. You concept it and where it's going to go, what type of impact it's going to make. It could be anything from trade show booths to billboards to social posts, as I mentioned. It really runs the gamut. But sometimes you get kind of that unlimited creativity to just go out and shoot your shot, as it were, present your big idea, and then you can always scale back from there.
Mm. How often do you get involved in the kids' homework projects because of your, I got this science project, I need some help.
I feel like it was a lot at first, but not to brag on them, both my kids I think are pretty artistically talented, so
that helps.
I feel like a lot of it now, again, is more of an advisory role as to how we could improve that thing in execution. You know, like we could make your diorama pop a little bit more if instead of all three people together, you know, maybe we space them out or we give them a little depth of field. Notes like that I wouldn't expect them to have right now, but they'll pick up along the way.
All right, I got you. So you currently are on FinCom. Have you been involved in other committees before, or in addition to? Or?
FinCom was my opening into municipal government. It's been an experience. I have loved every second of it. It was something I worried I might be underqualified for when I initially applied, but it's gone well, and it's been a huge learning experience. What kind of precipitated that was I had some questions about the town budget at the time. This was a few years ago. I wanted to learn more about it. I started to learn more about it, and then it got to a point where I felt like I wanted to make an impact in that, and not just sit back as a casual observer, but kind of step in there and take the reins when it comes to steering the town and giving it some direction and structure. Like I said, that was my first step in. From there, I was assigned kind of late in the game to the Library Building and Planning Committee, where we're just doing the oversight. At this point, we're close to wrapping up, as that project's almost complete. We're down to just a couple little punch list items for the contractors to go through, all the normal stuff you would expect. I got to partake in the school budget, and I'm one of the FinCom representatives. They're supposed to kind of attend or keep an eye on the other meetings. I don't want to sound like we're spying on people, but in terms of budget discussions, it's better to listen in on, say, the school committee meetings or something like that, and just kind of keep abreast of those changes as they're happening down the line.
It's just a matter of checks and balances. That's all, really.
Yeah. So I attend school committee meetings pretty regularly, and if I can't, I catch them on GCTV afterwards, which is fantastic. I also applied for the Waste Reduction and Recycling Committee once that kind of reformed and reopened. We've had a few meetings, but that's something else. I consider it a passion of mine. At work, we do a lot of energy efficiency and similar like waste reduction practices. We've done a lot of work with Mass Save and Recycle Smart here in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. They have a great tool. It's called the Recyclopedia. You can basically input anything in your household, and it'll tell you if it should go in your single stream recycling or not. But launching a lot of things like that, a lot of social outreach, and something that I felt was applicable to that committee that I could definitely help with. I think I have a above average understanding of the recycling process, and even at the commercial level, as well as the outreach that's generally effective around it. So that was something that I went up for. It's been similarly rewarding. It's a little bit of a slow start, but we're starting to make some traction.
So what was the discussion at home like when you decided to run for select board?
My wife was incredibly supportive, and I tried it was a couple conversations of me, asking, are you okay with this? There's going to be a lot. And her saying, yep, it's fine. You go do you, and whatever you feel you can help the town with, I fully support that. So, I feel like even in campaigning season, as things have started to ramp up, she's kind of feeling that squeeze a little bit and realizing how much of a commitment this will be. But my whole family, so my wife, my kids have been nothing but supportive. My friends have been super supportive of it. And I need some of that confidence going in. It's good to have that reassurance sometimes.
Yeah, we all would. Yeah, absolutely. So what was the domino that tipped over that made you decide to run?
I wouldn't say there was any one thing in particular. There were a few people that kind of got in my ear and suggested that maybe it's something that I should consider. Beyond that, I gave it a lot of thought and ultimately decided that it was kind of the next step in what I wanted to do. And the next step in that leadership and learning, more about every aspect of how the town functions, and not just that financial side. But I felt like I had a leg up because of my experience on finance committee. I mean, it's been invaluable, and I feel like a broken record because I say that to everybody. But it literally gives you insight into every single aspect of the town budget. You're meeting with department heads. Even that alone, it's great to meet with some of the people who run these town departments or town programs and get their input on how things are going and where we're functioning well, where we could be functioning better.
Interesting concept. So when you run into people on the street who not only said, "You're the man, you should run," what else did they say? What was bothering them at the time? And how long did they talk to you?
So that's been great. I honestly, I didn't run into a ton of people in the street who were like, "You should run." And even now, it's a little weird to me when people do recognize me when I'm out, because I consider myself, kind of I don't want to say a private guy, but I just haven't really.
You're under the radar.
Yeah, under the radar. That's a good way of putting it. It's funny because, like you said, everybody has an opinion on those things, and it feels like some of the people you talk to feel like we're growing too fast. Some of the other people feel like we're not growing enough in other areas, and it tends to go back and forth. I think everybody generally feels like the commercial and business growth is not where it could be, whereas we might be adding a few too many residents, at the same time, that we have a lot of people moving into town, which, it's not a bad thing. Grafton is not a small town. We haven't been a small town for a while. Everybody likes to think of it that way, I think, because we have such a tight communal feel. It's a fantastic place. But it's been growing, and it's going to continue to grow, whether we like that or not. So I think it's about doing that strategically and smartly, and it's a lot of that groundwork has been laid by the current select board and a lot of the current committees, but it's following through on a lot of those things. On the business front, you want that revenue to go up so that residential responsibilities and taxes have to not have to, but go down a little bit. And don't get me wrong, small businesses are wonderful. It's great that we foster small businesses, but one of the things that I've learned through my experience on FinCom is that you're really not going to go through the budget and identify that we're a couple hundred over here or we're a couple hundred over there and expect it to make any sort of dent. With a $72 million budget like the town has, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that need to move in one direction or another in order for it to make any sort of substantial or noticeable impact even on your tax front. So.
And as an outsider, as a voter,
yes,
and probably speaking for a lot of people, they look at how town government operates, and to the uneducated, it appears like everybody wants to row in the same direction, but it's almost as if the committees are and I don't want to say not cooperative, but it's almost like the committees work against each other based on the way bylaw is written, based on the way the charter is written. Then you throw the Commonwealth into the mix, and then it's like, no,
Yep.
You don't know which way to go.
Yep, there certainly is a lot of that, and again, that was something I found enlightening going through, the whole FinCom process, is that there are a lot of hiccups like that along the way, or things that the state mandates that you do, or fund, or things like that. And I think, if we talk about growth, residential growth, that's something that I feel like people are concerned, feeling like we have a lot of irons in the fire right now, a lot of development projects going, but at the same time, they're not really all the same thing. Like if you take a step back at the Pine Street development, that's transit oriented. That's something that's being dictated by the state. Where it's great. I think it's a wonderful thing. We're going to have a mix of residential and retail there. It would have been the type of place that I probably would have looked into when I initially moved to Grafton, because it's right where I needed to be. Easy train access, and
Sure.
I didn't need a large house at the time. It was just the two of us, what have you. But then we have other projects that are coming to fruition, being in like the Pleasant Street and the Upton Street. So I think people are concerned, feeling like there's a lot happening at one time, but these projects are actually spaced out, and there's a lot of benefit to the town with those too. As with commercial growth, you need, like I said, a few $100,000 to really move the needle in any way to affect anybody's tax base, any resident's tax base, or see any sort of discount on that side. And with small businesses, that's wonderful. They're moving in, and they're supporting local leases and property holders and whatnot. But the real value, I think, comes from improving upon that land. So if you can have somebody come in and construct something and really improve upon that land, that's where you'll see a lot of value for the town and towards that budget, between the permitting processes and then whatever revenue they're going to generate down the line. And affordable housing is another way that we can attack that budget as well. When you start with that housing density, it's less of a draw on the public utilities and whatnot, and more upside. It can, projects like that can be net revenue positive for the town in the same way that adding several small businesses can. I think it's just not something that people in the general public generally think of. And at the same time, we acknowledge there's concern, or I acknowledge there's concern. I think a lot of people do, that at the rate of town growth. But it's being properly managed, I think, is the best way to put that. And I think we're at a good place with a lot of committees right now, where there is expanding transparency. Most of them are beginning to work closely together again, and really reopening those lines of communication, so that we're all working towards the same goal, and it doesn't feel like we're rowing in opposite directions. Even though there's still some of that. But ultimately, as the select board member, your job is to represent the people and listen to them, but you're caring for the whole town as well. So some of those opinions are going to be very popular with some people and not as popular with others. But ultimately, that's what we're supposed to be doing, is watching out for what's best for everybody. Right. So you try and make as many people as possible happy, and at the end of the day, you just have to vote with your heart and your morals and whatever you're going to stick to, because that's what you're going to have to answer to.
Right. All right, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to address the people at home and ask for their vote. Tell them what your platform is, and there's your camera.
All right. Hey, Grafton. First of all, I'd like to take a quick second to thank Mr. Toma and the GCTV staff for inviting me in. This has been fantastic, giving me a chance to reach out to all of you and discuss my platform. You can also reach me at Andy Jefferson for Select Board on Facebook. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. You can also read more information about me there. If you run into me on the street or see me at a sporting event, please come over, introduce yourself. I'm happy to strike up a conversation and answer any other questions you may have. Remember that the last day to register to vote for town elections is April 18th, and I'm asking for your vote on Tuesday, May 17th.
Good luck. Thank you for coming in.
Appreciate it.
On behalf of all the talented people that work here at Grafton Community Television, this has been Meet the Candidate. Thank you for watching. I'm Bob DeToma.